Hello, welcome to It Ain't You, the show that represents the history of ethnic minority groups in the US and where knowledge becomes power. If you don't know, now you know. We're Estar,
Nyke,
Bella.
your very real hosts.
You brought up Black Panther, and I just, oh my gosh. Again, Black don't crack, so I really didn't have any idea of how old Samuel L. Jackson is.
Oh, I love Sam. Black people love Sam.
Man, he's in his 70s, mid to late 70s.
Yes. And
He doesn't look like it at all. He does not move like it at all. And this is what's really funny. Okay. Samuel L. Jackson was there for Dr. King's funeral.
Yes.
And was in his youth also somewhat of a hothead. Probably aligned a little. No, I'm not gonna put that one out there because I feel like that could come back and bite us. But it's out there where he was also a little bit militant. And when I found this out looking into this particular episode, right, it changed how I viewed how he was portraying Nick Fury in Marvel.
Oh.
Because it used
You
to...
didn't see that?
Well, no. I knew that Nick Fury was... The character in the comics was designed after him, essentially. But I didn't realize to what extent, right? I didn't realize he actually lived this life.
Yes.
He's just fighting the aliens that but he was fighting the white people who wanted to again brainwash a whole nation and dictate what everyone does and like suppress people. But now he's not fighting, he's fighting aliens in outer space. Which is not to take away from the amazingness of it.
See, this is the interesting thing also too about the films Black Panther in general.
And that's actually what brought it. It was like, wait a minute, hold on, I need to rewatch specifically Black Panther now because like what was the role he played in as Nick Fury in that? And I'm like, I want to see how he made those decisions now, knowing his past.
Yeah, I was like, you might have to rewatch Spider-Man too.
I need to rewatch all of them
because I'm like,
he's a side character, but he's a very important side character. And every decision he makes now as Nick Fury, I'm gonna be going back there going, wait a minute, this was something he did in his youth. I want to know.
I mean, it also changed the course of what Marvel was actually going to release,
which
as
actually makes me wonder if oh my gosh, what. I'm blanking on his name. The actor who plays T'Challa. I should not be forgetting his name.
Oh, Chadwick Boseman?
Yes.
Chadwick Boseman.
I'm like, wait a minute, my
It's okay.
If Chadwick Boseman had not passed away so early because of cancer, what would the storyline have been?
It would have been more actually now you have me blanking on people's names. Oh my gosh, Ryan Coogler. Coogler, they already had the series essentially written out. It was actually going to be more of the actual like father-son family, like how do you actually be king? Again, focusing on the actual stories surrounding the actual like the family part of it. And then how that works when you're in a certain position, when you have to, fight an enemy, when you have to like figure this out, all of that, which is why essentially Black Panther, like the actual like movie Black Panther, why it seemed more like a continuation of what was that, Civil War? Where was the one where
yes, Civil War. Civil War is the one where they introduce the Black Panther. And Black Panther like happens right after And for
Civil War.
for those that somehow have not yet watched these movies, for any reason, but basically, the character Black Panther in the Civil War starts off as, he suffers the loss of his father, and so he's very, very bitter and angry and resentful because it wasn't a peaceful passing; it was an assassination. So he was very, very bitter, very angry, and very resentful. And in that transition, he believed that he needed to avenge the death of his father by killing who he believed was the person who killed his father.
Right.
Which kind of went against his nature, but he believed it so much where he struggled with it for the whole film. And then at the start of the Black Panther, the actual movie, the Black Panther, right? He's undergone that. And like you said earlier, where like when he actually becomes king, the first thing the ghost of his father, essentially the spirit of his father, tells him like it's very difficult for a good man to be king. In a way, almost acknowledging like the very first thing you had to do as king was to, make peace with my death.
Right.
and yeah.
But so this is also interesting because it still goes with how I love how Sam Jackson was the link. But then if you actually look back at it, I probably still will write this at some point and go a little bit deeper in my analysis. But people don't see it unless you've been in Black American culture or you've studied this part of history. T'Challa versus Killmonger.
Yes.
Is literally Malcolm X versus
Dr. King. Yeah.
And the same, and it's crazy because they did have it generationally. So it continued on. The first one was essentially what was his name? Because it also started with the T.
T'Chaka, the father?
Yes. The father T'Chaka, and I'm forgetting was it Njobu? Because I can't remember if that was Killmonger's real name or if it was
Njobu I think was Killmonger's
Njadaka, I think.
Yes. So Ndjaga I think is Njobu, who is Killmonger's father.
Yes. That was essentially what happened there too.
Right.
That was the basis of all of this. It was literally like, okay, so we've got these two ways, these two most popular ways of approaching
a common
how we're gonna
a common situation, common to the family, not common to us.
Right. And again, it goes to, like, you can even look at it as when you get to Forrest Whitaker's character.
I know who you're talking about, but he is he's
the advisor, spiritual leader.
Yes.
And then you get also we're going to just erase this part of history.
By removing Njoku's whole storyline from
Njadaka, literally. We're just there was a brother. Everybody knows there was a brother, but they tell them, oh, he was killed, whatever. So
nobody knows that he has a son. Nobody knows there's another.
Nobody knows that. Right. And I applaud Ryan Coogler for doing this, but it's crazy too because people have to pay attention to Black Panther. Even some of the lines of dialogue that he gave, even just at the end where it's like, Black kid from Oakland believing in spaceships. Legit, that's Ryan Coogler's story.
Yeah.
You got him at USC's film school? Like, how? Again, and it's also funny. Isn't the person, the music director, his best friend? Isn't he Swedish?
Music director for the movie, for the film.
Yes.
Or I don't remember.
Isn't he Swedish? His name's Ludwig. I don't know how to pronounce this.
So
I'm sorry,
I don't remember,
Lulu.
but here's the thing.
He's Swedish.
I have the Black Panther soundtrack because it is
Oh, I do too.
motivational. And you know what's even funnier? It's motivational when I need to hit the gym and I need to run. And I'm like, hey, may as well.
Apparently, he also did Oppenheimer.
I would not be surprised.
And Tenet. Okay.
I mean,
Sir.
clearly,
and Turning Red. Wait.
Clearly, this man has some insane talent when it comes to curating a music playlist.
He did Turning Red. I'm done.
I like Oppenheimer had some pretty dang good music that definitely played into like elevating the film. And
but I'm saying it's interesting. The reason why I was only bringing up or I brought up that he's Swedish is because it's interesting because one of the only documentaries that I've ever seen that actually looks at the facts and not the kind of like, oh, here's all this raving about, who they are and how they're dangerous. The only documentary to be done on the Black Panthers is by Swedish News. And I think
for
this goes
Swedish
back
audience
for everybody. It wasn't just they did a lot of promotion in the States too, but it essentially took somebody from outside, and crazy enough, it was the Swedish.
Well, here's the thing, right? I think this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where the presentation that the Black Panthers chose, again, probably had a lot to do with, like, I don't want to put it all on their immaturity. I do believe that they felt the need to portray themselves that way because of the very fact that they started the Black Panthers as essentially neighborhood watch for the Black community. So yes, openly carrying an armed rifle within legal means at that time may not have looked great, but it had a purpose.
Oh, I'm gonna bring my Asian brothers and sisters into this too, because a lot of people don't know, and I'm about to let it out. I mean, it's out already, but
bring it.
There's a gentleman named Richard Aoki.
Oh wait,
who was a part of the Black Panther. But I'm gonna let you know what his job was. He was the gun runner. And we're not going to talk about the connections to Vietnamese. We're not going to talk about the connections to Filipinos. We're not going to talk about the connections to Cambodians. I'm just like, people are forgetting that, I guess, and there's another thing. People are also forgetting that Asian Americans existed at this time.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, this was one of the questions I had when I was researching was, we're very educated on Dr. King in this country. And again, Dr. King was...
Are we?
Well, more so than like...
I just want to say, I know that I haven't said a lot in this episode. It's because I literally represent the perspective of someone who has gone through higher education in this country at a pretty high level. As in, I went to good schools and things, and I know so little about either man. And so I've really just been sitting back, just listening and, learning this episode.
And the other thing is, when I say,
I love that.
Educated on Dr. King, I'm not saying, extremely educated on Dr. King, but in comparison to all the other characters that we've been talking about.
He's spoken about. I don't know if it's I get what Estar is saying. It's not really educated.
Right.
It's overly talked about, we'll say.
He's overly talked about in an overly simplified manner.
Yes.
Because we just, this country, it's not just this country. We're living in an age where it's the soundbite, it's the quote, it's the one little thing that we can take away from. So again, it's why such a phenomenal speech as the I Have a Dream speech. The only part we remember is apparently the improvised part.
We only remember that part because that's the only part we're taught.
We're taught.
It's so easy. Taught. It's so much easier to tell a fifth grader this man had such a good speech, and the most important part is the I have a dream that everyone gets along.
See, this is also why, like, I remember recently when people were talking, when the big deal, and it still is a big deal, but more so it was talked about a lot, was what constitutes representation in like TV and film.
Yes. Who gets represented?
And actually, yeah, to be honest, it's media in general. And
which kind of makes the three of us sitting in a room talking into a podcasting mic kind of a unique thing, because no one would be like, hey, this combination, this particular combination, happens a lot, which it doesn't.
And this is, to be honest, I think this, like what Estar was saying, where even though I've gone to good schools and everything and gone through higher education, and I know little to nothing about these two figures, and I'm like, this is one of the reasons, to be honest, why anti-Blackness and anti-Asian in Black and Asian spaces exists.
Yeah.
Because people just don't know. Like, honestly, when it came to the LA riots, and kind of how now it's become this thing where instead of it being about the police brutality handled
it's all
by
sudden,
LA court,
right,
with white police officers beating a man for no reason, using extreme excessive force on a halfway drunk, actually probably fully drunk,
remember
Black man
the ferry the ferry incident.
Right, the ferry incident, right. It was that, that was really what the LA riots were about. It became this thing of, well, Korean Americans and Black Americans don't get along, especially in LA, and they're doing this. And then, of course, they brought in the stuff that was happening in New York and in Chicago at the same time. In LA, now, I don't know necessarily what was going on in New York, which, to be honest, I think there was a lot of stuff, too, that wasn't
limited. Yeah.
Either,
there was a lot of social unrest at that time from the reports that are like coming out now.
Right. Yeah, but I'm saying that because I'm like, Malcolm X was in New York.
And the Watts
Red Fox was in New York. No. I'm saying like in that time, not the Watts riots.
Yeah.
The Watts riots were Blacks and Jews in the 60s. The LA riots was now what seems to be, they just limited to Black and Koreans in the 90s, in 92.
Right.
But like in New York, when we're talking about, again, these boycotts, I'm like, okay, there's interesting stuff, because the history there is, again, you've got all these Black leaders and all these activists, and you're telling me that who already have connections to, like, Red Foxx. A lot of people don't know Red Foxx, but if you ever watch Sanford and Son, that's Red Foxx.
Yes.
The dad is Red Foxx. His wife is Korean. He was also the first person to actually put Asian Americans on TV. So
hold on, Red Foxx?
Yes, Red Foxx.
I am gonna write this down because I'm gonna watch it.
He's the one that brought out, okay, everybody knows the Karate Kid and Mr. Miyagi. He was the one that gave Mr. Miyagi a job. Yes, in Hollywood. Thank you. And we're not talking about Bruce Lee, who was already training people in Kung Fu, but every doggone piece of martial arts he knew, and was specifically doing it for people who, this is what I'm saying. I'm like, all this stuff, I'm like,
there's so much that's just like, yeah. There's so much.
When you look at the history, certain things don't make complete sense. Now, when you look at other things, when, there were people who did believe that they were better than people, or they believed assumptions of, you steal, and then there were people who were actually stealing. Like, when you get all of that, of course, you can see that there would be some tension. But when you look at the history, it's like, okay, why is there tension? And for the most part, it's because people don't know. So even if you look at the LA riots and a lot of stuff that was happening between Blacks and Korean Americans, or even recent Korean immigrants, because that's what a lot of people weren't talking about. A lot of the people that they were saying were Korean Americans were not the people who had been there from the 1900s.
Yeah.
Like, we're not talking about those people who had already been Korean American for generations. We're talking about a lot of people who came in either the 60s, the 70s, or the 80s, when there was that new influx of Asian Americans in general, of people becoming citizens of America and all of that. So you're getting this disconnect from Black history, which is why Edward T. Chang
Again, gotta write this down. Edward T. Chang
has to create an entire Black history book only available in Korean, and it's literally called Who African Americans Are, because he has to give it to the recent Korean immigrants who are now becoming American citizens who have no idea what went on in America.
Hold on, where's the Chinese version of this so I can hand it to my parents?
But see, the thing is, though, a lot of Chinese already knew.
Not the recent Chinese.
Yeah, not the recent Chinese.
The recent Chinese have Google. The recent.
Well, yeah.
But again, that requires patience and willingness to learn about a whole other culture that I feel like is not a muscle that is exercised throughout the world.
They don't want to push that muscle because, again,
it takes energy and it's so much effort and it's hard. It's not easy.
And it's the same energy that it takes to listen to a person before you decide to say that they're wrong or they don't know anything, or
it's just challenging. It's challenging your internal biases, which again, we started this recording where I was talking about this episode can be very challenging for people to listen to because it's going to challenge some of the biases that we have. And anytime you challenge an internal bias, it changes how you think of the world and how you see the world. And that is very difficult. And I want to acknowledge that, yes, that is very, very difficult work to do.
Right. Like, again, I was at a PWI school, predominantly white institution in middle of Massachusetts. And I went in knowing that I wanted to be an English major because I was like, I'm going to write a novel for my thesis. I wanted to be a writer.
Yes.
Like that, I was going to take that thesis. I was going to publish it, all of this stuff.
Yes.
I did not know I was going to be sucked into, I mean, I knew I loved history, but I didn't know I was going to be sucked into the kind of history, sociology, and also tech
that you find yourself in right now.
Into it. Right. I had no idea. But I get there and I decide to become, because at the time, Africana studies and Asian American studies, and even you could be in, I think we had Asian studies. Yeah, I can't remember which one was a major or because we didn't have Asian American anything actually.
Okay.
You had to be under Asian studies or American studies, and then you would say that like you're writing about or you're researching like Asian American studies. But now we have Asian American studies as a major and Africana studies is also a major.
Okay.
But when I went there, Africana studies was only a concentration, which is what we call our minors. And so I, signed up to be an Africana studies major and was just like, well, because the stuff that I'm writing about, like I a lot of stories from the perspective of what I was finding out about my family history, things that I was feeling being a, actually having the identity of being a Black American woman who's also mixed, but having a partner who's Asian or having a partner who's, Hispanic or like all of this stuff. I wanted to know how people, like how that was doing a lot of stuff psychologically, essentially. And then how other people would perceive it and looking at that through history. But when I get into Africana studies, I remember the first core class for the concentration was really looking into Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, like basically all of these people, even Du Bois. Like I know way more about Du Bois that people have no idea. Like first of all, everybody thinks Du Bois is, kind of, I mean, he is great, but like they think, I don't know, there's this myth of Du Bois in history that one, people don't know that he was literally down the street from where he was born and raised down the street from where my school is in middle of nowhere, Massachusetts. And even like his idea of double consciousness, that also comes from the fact that he was a light-skinned Black man
who had a certain privilege because of that.
Right. And again, this is also what people don't know too. Malcolm X was also a light-skinned black man because
black and white TV
history.
doesn't really help with that.
Right. And he also had red hair, which a lot of people don't know about black folks that have red hair.
That is an interesting genetic difference from the stereotype that you have in, that most of America has.
Right. There's a lot of black people that have red hair. It's just the thing. I like some of my family members have like lighter, like ashy brown hair, just like naturally.
Well, that's the same stereotype where it's like, oh, Asians all have black hair. No, we don't. We my family alone, we have, the lighter brownish colored hair.
Right.
So, I mean, there's many of us, but yeah.
Right. So we're learning all this stuff. And I can tell you in all of my 4 years of being an Africana Studies concentrator, and it might have just been because of the professors, like that class in particular was supposed to go over a lot of stuff that was Africana. So I'm not necessarily like getting on them. It's of what the courses that were available. But I'm like, if we're going to talk about somebody like Malcolm X or like Dr. King, how come not once did they mention, again, I grew up where Malcolm X was kind of like,
he's an important character.
Second to Jesus, when you get, when I get into this class and they're talking about Malcolm X, they're not telling me about Yuri Kochiyama.
It's an inconvenient truth. So
they're not telling me about Grace Lee Boggs. They're not telling me about they're not telling me about Richard Aoki. And we were talking about Black Panthers. I literally have a short story in my thesis that looks at the Black Panthers, but they're not telling me about the Brown Berets with all the Hispanics who were also involved. They're not telling me about
they're what I have like this term now where I call an inconvenient truth, because by you existing, it makes the story so much more nuanced and harder for the general person who might not be so interested to digest what's going on.
Yeah. And I think that's what it is. It's the nuance. Like there's a lot of stuff with Dr. King that Black people know that this is funny. If you ever watch the movie Barbershop with Ice Cube and Cedric the Entertainer, however y'all feel about Cedric the Entertainer after the Cat Williams interview is neither here nor there, but Barbershop is still a phenomenal film. When he goes off as the older Black character that's essentially supposed to give advice, that is a trope. It's a pretty good trope in many Black films.
I was like, Forrest Whitaker comes to mind.
Oh, I love Forrest Whitaker. He's not the comedic one though. Yeah. In these things, he's definitely more of the like life advice.
Yes.
I'm going to guide you on this journey. But again, in Barbershop, we always have these sections in all three of the films where Cedric the Entertainer's character basically gives like the facts. And he's like making jokes about it, but he's like, let's be real. Like, we knew about R. Kelly. We knew about that. And people are like, yo, like, you can't say that. And it's like, why can't you say that? And he's like, why can't you say it? We're in the barbershop. This is a Black man's, like, paradise. What are you talking about? We can talk about any and everybody. And you're not exempt from being talked about. And because there was a scene that is, like, probably the most funny, like, literally the funniest of all of them, where he talks about Rosa Parks. And he was like, Rosa Parks didn't do nothing but sit her Black butt down. Like, and he just goes off, but then people get so pissed that he's saying that. And he's like, stop. We all know this. Like, we all know this. We're not taking, that doesn't take away from what they did and what came from it. And this is what's getting on people. They think that the nuance takes away from the actual result.
Which it doesn't. If anything, like, it embellishes the result.
Right.
Because if we're talking about the sanitization of history, when you sanitize the history, you reduce it to the bare minimum, the bare bones, which again makes it easier for people to take and absorb. But then the end result of you learning the sanitized version is it's very two-dimensional. And it becomes very gray zone, or not even, it becomes a black and white, like it's good or bad.
Exactly.
And we're humans, we're hardly black and white good or bad. We're every color.
Exactly.
We're everything in between.
Even the shades of gray. No, I'm kidding.
50 Shades? No, I'm kidding. No, that's a real. Oh, I might need to cut that.
We're really 50 Shades of brown is what we really are, but
50 Shades of every color of the rainbow.
Right, because like again, we kind of talked about it randomly. Was the animated Our Friend Martin?
Yes.
That I did rewatch, and it holds up.
I rewatched it. I had so many questions at the end going, how 5-year-old me did not notice a lot of the later questions that they actually posed in the film.
Right. I mean, I know it's going to be weird, but I'm going to explain it. The tie to Mean Girls.
Ooh. All right. We might have to make this a quick one, though.
Yeah, no. It's very quick. The tie to Mean Girls. So we get Our Friend Martin. Yes. It's literally Dr. King's story for children.
With time travel to make it interesting.
Yeah, right. With time travel, with all this stuff. It's actually done very well. And again, you can only do this in animation. If you look at the cast, you've got John Travolta, Susan Sarandon, LeVar Burton,
Angela Bassett,
two of Dr. King's kids. Who else is in this? Oh my goodness! When I saw
Samuel L. Jackson,
like, yes, and hilariously, he's playing the radical black dude in this as well.
So again, it's like, why did I go into that rabbit hole? It's like, wait a minute, Samuel L. Jackson, Angela Bassett, something's here. Black Panther, when you were casting the movie, Coogler, were you looking at this going?
Well, no, he knows Angela Bassett.
He knows a lot of people
in film. They've always been. That's why with Angela Bassett only recently getting an Oscar. That's why
that was honorary.
And it was honorary. This is why people were so pissed off.
I got mad saying the word honorary Oscar.
Right. This was why people were so pissed off at last year's Oscars when they gave it to Jamie Lee Curtis. It actually had nothing to do with Jamie Lee Curtis being a white actress.
She's a great actress. There's nothing that says,
There was nothing. No one had any issue with her being white other than the fact that they were like, y'all are consistently giving it to people who did not necessarily. And even if you watch Everything Everywhere All at Once, Jamie Lee Curtis's character in that was not exactly...
I watched that movie. I don't even remember her being in there.
Thank you. They did advertise her, but again, that wasn't necessarily that. But then you get Angela Bassett, who just the beginning of Black Panther alone, she gives 2 great speeches in Black Panther. But because they're like, we don't give Oscars to
monologues.
Are you serious? Come on.
The MCU has long proven. The MCU has long proven that superhero films can be done in a way that rivals your like Shakespearean kind of,
thank you,
Hollywood film.
Exactly. So you get Our Friend Martin is honestly phenomenal story. It gives you facts, it gives you details, but of course it's not giving you some of the things that Dr. King we don't necessarily want to talk about.
It essentially.
Should I say it or should I not? Should I say it or should I not?
Say it.
I mean, people should know. Everybody should know. They really don't know. But this is what got people pissed off at the film with David Oyelowo. What was that? Selma? That
I mean, I feel like we could name so many movies.
I think it's Selma. But this one in particular, because I think in this one they mentioned some of the stuff that a lot of other films and things would not mention. Like Dr. King was continuously cheating on Coretta.
Yes.
And so they didn't mention things like that. Because it's a kid's film. Why are we talking about
and it's an inconvenient truth. It's not like this is like pulled from someone's memory that you can't, tie it back to an actual incident that was like recorded.
Right. So again, but the thing is though, it's not necessary to tell the story, especially to kids. Now to adults, that probably does need to be mentioned, because maybe Dr. King shouldn't have been in some of them places where he was.
Yeah.
And then maybe some of the people wouldn't attacked him, or wouldn't have had a chance to attack him, because he wouldn't have been into some of them places. But again, that's neither here nor there.
And we're not talking about morals.
Maybe.
We're not discussing morality of the person, but his actions.
Right. So again, that's for adults, you can mention that. For kids, of course, you're not going to mention it. So we're getting essentially a kid's version of his story.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, even to be honest, I've seen that. I used to watch it actually every year until the maybe like sophomore year of high school. So you're getting like childhood to high school.
Yeah.
So I'm watching the same thing. It's, of course, Santa's not, but you still leave with questions.
Mm-hmm.
And like, wait, and not questions that can't be answered, but you're like, wait, I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking more deeply about this. Okay, like, what do you do with this?
Mm-hmm.
Then.
Thank you all for listening to It Ain't New, where if you don't know, now you know. We're Nyke,
Bella,
Estar.
Please show us some love on Spotify by leaving us a rating or a review, and join our Patreon so we can grow and continue to give you all wonderful content.